Dave, I am so genuinely happy that The Witcher is out there on Netflix, and based on the passionate, let's say, responses to my review on GameSpot.com, it seems like people are really enjoying it.
Yeah, I think passionate's a bit of an understatement, but we did watch the entire series, so there's going to be major spoilers as the title indicates, and before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to GameSpot. So Mike, being that the GameSpot review was yours, you're the one who wrote it, and people passionately responded, what were your general thoughts?
I need to start by saying that I'm a huge Witcher fan. You know, I played The Witcher 3, I have read the original books.
You're a liar. You're not a fan.
Shut up. Can we do that again? Sorry,
Yeah.
I felt attacked. I literally am a Witcher. This is real, and I just do not think that the show is good.
Can you tell me what the Trial of Grasses involves? What do you do?
Netflix threw an event in Los Angeles, and they had the Trial of Grasses at it, and it involved doing a shot of pickle juice.
Who knew? I always accidentally say Trial of Glasses. It's like a tongue twister to say Trial of Grasses.
The Trial of Grasses, Trial of Grasses.
Yeah.
Say it 3 times fast.
But yeah, so like,
what did you think?
I also was a big fan of the books. I actually read the books originally about 4 years ago, right when The Witcher 3 came out, because I wanted to dig into the lore. Yeah, and I was telling you, like, I love the first two books, especially the short stories, Sword of Destiny and The Last Wish. And then I went ahead and reread them before this came out, so I'd be super well prepared, which honestly I think hindered my enjoyment of it. It was like, for me, knowing the books so well at this point really just made me notice the things that they didn't do. And I think, unfortunately, instead of watching the show for what it was, I watched it for what I wanted it to be. And I think that kind of changed my assessment of it.
I don't know, because we kind of agree on the show, and I really feel like it does have some fundamental problems.
Right.
Before we dig into all of our complaints, let's talk about what we liked, because there was a lot of stuff for me. So Dave, what did you like about this show?
Yeah, I think in general, the production value was incredible. Really good production value. The action sequences were often really cool. Like the Butcher Blaviken scene was amazing. Just in general, whenever Geralt was killing people, was a blast to see.
People or monsters.
Right, people are monsters. I mean, people more so killed people in general. Like even the Golden Dragon one, he was killing people. Yeah, so like the production value, I like the music. I loved Jaskier. I like him in the books. Loved him here. So
yeah, I think the casting in general is really well done. I think there was some hubbub and a lot of conversation around Henry Cavill, Superman, being Geralt, who is like a character who is the polar opposite of Superman. This Cavill's most iconic role, right? Geralt is brooding and a huge asshole a lot of the time, and I think that Cavill, I think this is like a transformation for him. Like he has said in interviews that he was inspired by the game version of the character, like as far as his voice, the growly kind of,
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought he was so good. Anya Chalotra as Yennefer and Freya Allan as Ciri, I thought were also really good. And as you said, Joey Beatty as Jaskier, or as the game players and people who read the localizations know him, Dandelion.
Yeah.
He was so good.
Yeah, and you were saying, and I didn't know this, that apparently he actually played the lute for real.
Oh, yeah.
And
so
I'm guessing it's his voice for real too, right?
So I talked to the showrunner, Lauren Schmidt-Hisrich, a while back.
Yeah.
And yeah, she told me that they were searching for their Jaskier, and then they got this video from Joey Beatty where he was actually playing the lute and singing, and they just went, oh, this is the guy. We got him.
Yeah, and he's super charismatic too. Like he's exactly how I'd imagine him. Regardless of what you think about their meeting and everything, like I do like the dynamic between Geralt and Jaskier.
Yeah.
In the books and here, they're a good duo because he's so serious and gruff all the time.
It's a really good contrast,
right.
and honestly, I loved the show almost any time the two of them were on screen together, just kind of playing off each other.
Yeah, and that's part of what I like so much about the short stories too, is they're such a good duo. And as soon as Jaskier is introduced near the end of The Last Wish, for me, it just really heightened the whole series.
Definitely.
The production value too, and set design and everything.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Like a lot of it is really cool.
Right, like all the fantasy settings, wherever they were in the locations were really good. I think the CGI was a bit of a mixed bag, where sometimes it was good and sometimes it wasn't.
I think overall it looked, if you compare it to a show that, I think like Game of Thrones, which, I have different issues with, but Game of Thrones generally had pretty solid CGI. That usually wasn't the complaint. And I think that the effects in Witcher are generally comparable.
Yeah, I mean, it never bothered me. I think like I didn't love the way the devil looked, but other than him
in
episode 2, right?
Yeah.
That was episode 2. But like in general, it was great. It was good, and like especially the production backgrounds, like I was saying, the set design and everything. Like it's just a really beautiful world at times, and that was nice to see.
Totally.
Okay, so while there were a lot of things that we really liked about the show, both of us came out not liking it for different reasons. I was disappointed. You in particular didn't like it. And I know people, I do think people are going to love this show, and we've already seen that, but I think it's important that people understand what our issues were, and hopefully you can understand why. And if you disagree, that's cool, but I think it's important.
Please stop yelling at me on Twitter.
But I'm glad people love the show, but I do want to present the issues that I had, and I think you want to present what your issues were too.
Yeah, I mean, we're here to talk about it.
Yeah. So what in particular, like what stood out to you?
I think the biggest problem with the show for me is the fundamental problem of trying to present Geralt and Ciri and Yennefer's stories all at the same time when they're taking place sometimes decades apart from one another, and yet the show is weaving them together. In one episode, I think it's episode 4, when Geralt is fighting the Striga and Yennefer is undergoing her transformation.
Right.
And the show is literally cutting between these things like rapid fire, like going from one to the other and back and forth. And in my head, I'm going, these things have nothing to do with each other. They're not thematically related. These characters have never met. They're taking place 50 years apart. So what is the connection the show is trying to make? I think it's failing.
Yeah, for me, like I wasn't mad that the timelines were different per se. Like I didn't find it confusing or anything, but it was the fact that they decided to put an A, B, and C story into it. And for me, I felt that
like in each episode, like there's right, because the original stories, not to interrupt you, but the original stories are just Geralt.
Yeah.
Almost all the stories because it does get into some stuff from the novels where they changed perspective to the other characters a little bit.
Yeah.
But the stories from The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny, which this is primarily based on, are just from Geralt's perspective.
Right.
And so this show, in each episode, I think, has at least an A and a B story, and often an A story, a B story, and a C story. So there's all these subplots mixed together.
Right, there's always an A and a B story, like you said. And I really feel like the show would have done better if it just focused on an anthology-style series, like the books were, at least at this point.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, here is a short story that we're going to adapt, because by doing so, I feel like they took out a lot of elements from the short stories that, at least for me, made them work, because they sort of had to strip it out and make it a lot quicker to allow for these B stories and additional C stories, which oftentimes were things like Yennefer's backstory, which I didn't enjoy as much.
We're going to talk.
Get into.
Yeah.
But for me, again, it's the fact that by doing the ABC structure, I feel like it's stripped away from the A story and made the A story less impactful than it should have been.
I totally agree with you, because what I wish the show had done instead is just do a whole episode about Geralt, and then do an entire episode about Yennefer, and make it clear when in the timeline of the story these things are taking place, because right now, and I know people have been arguing with me, after watching the first episode, because this is right now, we're shooting this Friday morning, people have just started to dig in, so the show has just come out. Right now, the series opens with the sacking of Sintra.
Right. Yep.
Later on in the show, it catches up to the sacking of Sintra again, because Ciri's storyline is in the future. Geralt and Yennefer are in the past at different points. So Geralt and Yennefer catch up to each other eventually, but then it builds back up to the sacking of Sintra, and eventually characters like Calanth, who we saw. Is that the pronunciation?
Well, I listen to the books on tape. I should say that. So, like, I've read the books, and I go back and forth. So some of my pronunciations are probably book on tape pronunciations.
Right. But let me point out that the audiobook also calls Dandelion Dandelion.
Thirdly, no one ever found out Dandelion's third wish.
The show catches back up to and it shows the sacking of Sintra again. And like Calanth, or Calanthe, who we saw die in the first episode, is just fine. Like in episode 4, she's alive again. There was a point, I want to fact check you a little bit when you said that you didn't find it confusing, because there was a point in episode 7, I think, where we were watching it, we were watching the screeners around the same time, and Geralt goes to Sintra, and Mousesack shows up, and you and I both went, oh, it's the Doppler, you're in trouble, Geralt, and then we had to think about it a little harder to remember, no, this is in the past, none of that has happened yet.
Right.
That's confusing. And you and I have read the books and played the games. If it's not clear to us, I think that like I'm happy that a lot of people are saying it's not that confusing, you're an idiot. I'm not happy they're calling me an idiot. But I'm happy that people are understanding it. But I think for the average TV viewer or somebody who is simply not like steeped in the Witcher lore and this story, it's gonna be really confusing.
Right, because at that point, the Doppler had just escaped, essentially, because he was now helping Ciri, and then that was the episode before. So then that next episode, I was like, oh, I guess Geralt's timeline finally caught up with Ciri's timeline.
Nope, that's just
so the
that's
Doppler
just
was going to
normal
introduce
mouse act
him.
It's still
right.
I mentioned that
But then like they made it clear eventually. But at first I was like, oh, that's the Doppler.
Yeah. So they always make it clear eventually. And I mentioned before that I chatted with the showrunner of this show, and she had said that this was a problem that it was almost impossible for her to solve. Is how to present all of these three characters' stories as equal. And she came up with this solution after watching Dunkirk because it, it's a Christopher Nolan movie, and it has a storyline that takes place over a week, one that takes place over a day, one that takes place over an hour, and they're all interwoven. And she thought, well, I could do that.
Yeah, except Dunkirk saw like the same event at the same like 3-week timeline, basically.
Yeah, and it's like a 2.5-hour movie.
And they do the cool ticking thing too, where it's like, oh, it's faster ticking, slower ticking.
I think Dunkirk did a better job of communicating it, because the other thing that Lauren Schmidt-Hisrich said to me about it is that she deliberately wanted to make it unclear. And there's clues in the early episodes.
Yeah, there are, like the Foltest thing where you see Foltest as a kid and Foltest as an adult in the same episode.
Exactly. Geralt is talking to Foltest, who's like an old man, and then but it's like, it's not super clear if you're not looking for it. Like there's a shot in Yennefer's storyline, she's at the party, and there's like a little kid who somebody calls Foltest. And like you and I pick up on that because we know who Foltest is, but the average person watching has just been introduced to this character. I really don't think most people will pick up on that. And that's deliberate. She said she wanted it to be something that people would gradually realize. And she wanted people to think that these storylines were taking place simultaneously, and then gradually it would dawn on them that they weren't. And I don't understand why.
Right, like that's fine, but I don't understand how that adds to this particular story.
It seems like it just makes it convoluted.
Like to me, I guess that whole build-up was to show, like, guess what? Geralt was in Sintra the whole time at the beginning. But I have different issues with that, which we'll get into with book changes.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about book changes? Because that's a good transition. That's a crazy change. I want to make it clear, and I think you feel the same way, which is, I have no problem with them changing things if it still makes sense. But the problem is that they kept a lot of key moments from the story exactly intact, like iconic moments, but they changed a lot of plot around them, and so they kind of don't make sense anymore. Or to us, they make less sense than they did in the books. So maybe if you're watching and you haven't read the books, you don't notice as much, but to us, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Right, and that's where I was saying before, where like I feel like if you read the books, you'll have more issues with me, and that's with the show, and that's where I think it might have tainted my watching of this. The fact that I just reread it, so it's so fresh.
Yeah,
but some of this stands out so much, though.
I think it's a fair critique, though, in a lot of cases. You had some specifics you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, like some of it stands out so much. Like we were bringing up Sintra and all of that, and all the changes, like how the timeline was switched around, so Geralt eventually turns out he was in Sintra in the first episode.
Right, and in the books he showed up, he did try to go to Sintra and rescue Ciri, but that was because they had met before then.
Well, he does like a bunch of things. So yeah, like at first he goes to Sintra, and then he meets with Calanthe, and most of those things that happen in the show happen when Ciri was a little kid.
Yeah, it happens much earlier.
Right. And they kind of come to an agreement where he's like, well, I'm not going to take Ciri, that's cool.
Calanthe is not nearly as big of an asshole in the books as well.
No.
She's a lot more reasonable, and they made her awful in the show.
And she's also not racist against elves in the book. I don't know why they decided to do that. But like, I guess it was just to show the elf-human issues.
I think it's just world building at the expense of her character. Right. Because they make her into a villain, and she's not supposed to be.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they make her into like a really big villain. But
anyway.
But anyways. And then the huge thing is that Geralt's supposed to meet Ciri and Brokilon. Like I really like that meeting. It's a fun meeting in the book.
There's a whole storyline from the books in which Ciri runs away because there's this whole arranged courtship thing.
Yeah.
And Geralt rescues her from Brokilon essentially, and during this time together, they seriously bond, and this is years before Nilfgaard attacks Sintra. So, and I'm gonna spoil something from the end of the series again. If you haven't watched it, go away. Ciri and Geralt meet finally in like the last scene of the show, and it's this super, and it's the same in the books.
Right.
At the end of the second collection of short stories is when they finally, they have a reunion, but in the show it's not a reunion, it's just a union.
Yeah.
Because they've never met each other. And the fact that they don't have an existing bond totally undermines this entire moment to me.
Right, it's supposed to be this super emotional moment in the book where like at least like when I read it, I was practically at tears when they hugged each other because it's like Geralt's been searching for her and they'd already met each other and he thought he screwed up. And it's also, they screw up the Destiny thing too, in my opinion. But like,
yeah, they try to replace the bond that Ciri and Geralt already have.
Right.
With characters constantly yammering at him about Destiny, like all the way back to Renfrey in the first episode, as she's dying, says something about Destiny, and then Geralt's mom in his fever dreams when he's sick says something about. Everyone's constantly just blah blah blah. Your Destiny, you gotta your Destiny, and it's like that's not. I don't think that's interesting.
But also like, it's supposed to be this emotional moment at the end of the show, but it doesn't feel as earned because in the books they know each other, so you're so happy for them to find each other again, and in this it's like. They don't. Why do they even recognize each other?
I think she glimpses him for 1 second in Sintra, but like
they glimpsed each other for 1 second at Sintra. Both of them did, and that's about it. But like the other thing with Destiny 2 was that in the book series.
Destiny 2, I love that game.
Yeah, I know you do. You're a huge Destiny fan.
Sorry.
The other thing with the Destiny thing though is that it's more like Geralt realizing how important Destiny is eventually. Like first he gets her through Destiny. And he doesn't care. He goes to get her.
Yeah, the law of surprise, all of that stuff.
He goes to pick her up. He's a law of surprise and goes to Clancy. He's like, if you don't want to give her to me, I don't care, whatever. And he leaves.
Yeah, he's fighting against it.
Right, and then he meets her eventually, and then he gives her up again. And then like the thing with at the farm with the merchant guy, I'm forgetting his name, is Geralt.
The guy Geralt.
Right.
Saves.
I think it's important that in the book, Geralt's the one who once again invokes the law of surprise. In the books. In the show, it's the other guy who does it.
Yeah.
But it's important that Geralt's the one who does it, so we're just like, sure, whatever, I'll do the law of surprise thing, because he doesn't care anymore at that point.
It's just
the destiny of him doing it again. It's just like that's how destined it is to happen.
It's a series of small changes that don't seem impactful, but they have this butterfly effect.
But here's the weird thing to me in the show, and this is what my qualm with the whole Sintra thing is that Geralt showing up in Sintra to pick up Ciri because it's his destiny, and then Clancy saying no, and then missing each other, to me that is like the exact opposite of the whole point of the destiny. Like he was right there to pick her up. If destiny was true, then wouldn't that have just worked out right there?
And it's nonsensical that Calanth would not let her go with him when they are well aware that they're about to be attacked and f***ed up by Nilfgaard.
Yeah.
The other big change, there's a million of these.
Yeah.
The other thing I really wanted to bring up was in the first episode, the fight in the marketplace at which he earns his nickname, the Butcher of Blaviken.
Yeah.
So there's a thing called the Tridum Ultimatum, right? In the books where Geralt recognizes one of these thugs with Renfrey, and he sort of gradually gleans their plan, which is they're going to repeat this gambit that they've done previously called the Tridum Ultimatum. They're going to take the entire marketplace full of civilians hostage and kill them one by one until Stregobor gives himself up. And so the choice that Geralt is faced with is kill these people who have not attacked him yet to save all these civilians, or let events play out. It's basically the trolley problem, right? Do you switch the track so that the trolley kills one person instead of, it's like a philosophy thing.
Yeah, and then that's also what makes it all the more tragic when the people turn on him afterwards, when he was doing something to try to save them.
Because they don't know yet, or they don't know at all what the thugs were planning. And in the show, instead, they cut all of that out. The marketplace is completely bereft of people.
Yeah.
So there's zero stakes, and then Geralt kind of just walks up and they just attack him. And then Stregobor shows up and says, well, you made your choice. It's like, motherfucker, he didn't make a choice. He got attacked and defended himself.
Because also, like, in the book, again, like, Stregobor comes and he's like, dude, could just leave with me, man. Like, these people aren't going to understand. They're going to hate you. Why would Stregobor hate Geralt? Like, at the end of the show, Geralt just saved him. And also, the alderman's daughter also is like, leave, never return. When in the show, Geralt just saved her life.
It's like really clumsy world building, and they didn't, like the parts from the original story that they removed make the entire moment just not make sense anymore.
Right, like I feel like a lot of these short stories, what made them so impactful for me in the books was the nuances of it. Yeah. Like another nuance from that short story is you never really know if Renfri was actually a monster or not.
Right, whereas the show I think makes it pretty clear that she's
right.
not.
Like other than magic not affecting her in the show, like it makes it pretty clear like she's been unduly harmed, essentially. Like Stregobor is evil, she's okay in the show. But in the book, it's much more like you're not sure. It's more questionable.
It's much less black and white. It's way more
and
interesting.
That's really what the thing that Stregobor's asking Geralt at the end is like he wants to do an autopsy on her to find out if she was a monster, and he says no.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you'll never know if she was really a monster or not.
Right.
Which is a much more interesting thing to me is that he doesn't want to find out if he was correct or not about that. And like I had another one with it too. The Golden Dragon thing is just another example of how the changes bother me. Right, this is episode 6. Yeah. So they're different names in the book and the show, but like essentially they're going to go hunt a dragon and Geralt doesn't want to because because dragons are intelligent beings. And that's
right, and he doesn't kill innocent beings. And also in this, I know what you're gonna say, but real quick as an aside, he stands by and lets this knight ache of whatever just slaughter this innocent creature. And we turned subtitles on and Googled what the creature is. It's a Hurika, which is a nearly extinct magical creature that's completely gentle and said to be more rare even than dragons are. The Geralt that we know from the source material would literally never stand by and watch an innocent creature get slaughtered for no reason, and that drove me f***ing nuts. Anyway.
Right. Well, yeah. The end of this in the short story in the book is that he stands, and in the show he stands up for the golden dragon because it's a rare creature. But like,
and it doesn't want to harm anyone.
Right.
That's the point. It's not a monster. Yeah. He kills monsters. He doesn't kill people. He doesn't kill innocent creatures that are just bugging someone. He doesn't want to kill the devil in the Edge of the World in the elf story in episode 2.
Which for
the same reason.
Right, because it's just an intelligent being, which is really important to this character. But like part of the thing and what bothers me about the writing of the show is that throughout their travels, Ike, the Reapers and the dwarves, they all kind of get along in the book. They don't like begrudgingly get along.
They reach an agreement.
Right, they reach an agreement that, hey, we understand how difficult it is to be in our profession. It's a dying profession. There aren't as many monsters. Let's split the reward. Whoever kills it gets the biggest reward. But like, yeah, they don't like each other, but they come to this begrudging agreement and they're fine with each other. And in this show, they just make them all like hate each other and all that. And
they're just all assholes to each other, and there's no nuance.
Also, Yarpen Zegran's awesome in the book, and he's kind of an asshole in this. But anyways, the real point is that like I like the nuance of the fact that like they're not these horrible people in the book. Yeah. Like this is their job, and this is what they're doing, and they don't hate each other. Like, look, we're all trying to do the same thing. Let's figure out a way to do it that's like equal for everybody.
Let's split the loot.
And that's, for me, that's part of the world building of the books that made them interesting, is that there's this nuance to it.
Let's talk about Yennefer's storyline, because this is something that there's like a couple of lines in the original stories where Geralt he has this thought about how many sorcerers and sorceresses were actually hideous or deformed or whatever, and they are transformed via magic. It's not like a thing that happens to everybody, but he suspects that Yennefer at one time was a hunchback for whatever reason. That's just his instinct. And so the show takes that little guess and totally runs with it. And the backstory that they've invented for Yennefer is so baffling to me.
Yeah.
There's so many moments that I just don't understand what's going on just watching the show. Like seeing the images on screen, I'm confused. Like right in her first scene, she is attacked and she teleports to Aretuza somehow, accidentally. And Istrid is there, who's another minor character from the books. I appreciate all these minor characters getting fleshed out, but like, how the hell did she get there? And then she gets back to her farm, and then Tissaia comes to buy her or whatever.
Yeah, and Edna from Downton Abbey. Edna from Downton Abbey. Yeah.
She's also really good, but it's just the writing and the plot is just not. It doesn't connect the dots to me.
Well, I mean, I guess like to me, I felt like that was just them taking from Harry Potter. It's like, oh, you just randomly explode in a magical moment.
Right.
And it's like for her, that was a teleportation, which I was like, fine, whatever, I get. I don't know why Istrid thought teleporting her away would save her from Tissaia, because Tissaia just immediately showed up.
It's so bizarre.
Also, why did they make Aretuza so evil?
Okay, so I really want to talk about this. This is one of my biggest what the moments of the entire show. first of all, Yen sucks at magic. She's terrible in all her lessons.
Yeah.
And the show is deliberately trying to make us think that she is the worst student, so that when we see Tisaya talking to the other students, we'll think like this is some secret graduation ceremony or something that Yennefer is being left out of. Yennefer's watching from the shadows. Tisaya turns all of the other students into eels and then makes Yennefer push them into the water with a broom. What the f***? Okay, so I understand that it's supposed to be like the students who are not good enough get turned into eels that then power Aretusa somehow.
It's the Aretusa windmill.
Speaking of Harry Potter, speaking of Hogwarts, imagine if at Hogwarts, you know, the bottom 90th percentile of the class just got turned into blast-ended Scroots for Hagrid's f***ing Care of Magical Creatures lessons. It doesn't make sense. People would notice if 90% of each class of sorceresses at Aretusa f***ing disappeared and were never heard from again.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the whole point is that at least during Yen's class, they're all orphans that nobody gives a shit about. I guess that's supposed to be the point. But the same reason, I don't know why they threw that in. And then I know your big qualm, too, is that Yen's transformation, where they...
Yes.
So, like, in the books, all it is, every single sorcerer and sorceress isn't able to have kids because of something they do.
They're all sterile.
They're all sterile.
And it's never explained exactly why.
And it was because of some original magician way back when was like, they're already screwing with nature too much. They shouldn't have kids. So they made it a thing where like every single magician was going to become sterile.
It's like a law of the land, but it's not. I don't think it's specifically linked to the physical transformation they
No, it's not. Like, I mean, like, and also every single sorcerer and sorceress decides to become more beautiful. It's not just Yennefer. All of them do that. But like, the point is like, it's like the eggs in her body are dead. And it's also the same with guys. It's not like they removed the dude's dicks. They're also sterile. Like, all the guys are sterile too.
They are not castrating sorcerers. Sorcerers in The Witcher have dicks, for sure.
Very important.
They definitely have dicks.
Istrid and Yen, they do it all the time.
So,
but Istrid can't have kids either.
So when Yennefer undergoes this transformation, and very graphically and specifically, they remove her uterus through her vagina.
Yeah.
Here's why it doesn't work. It doesn't work because her entire character motivation, and we could spend an hour arguing about whether this is good or bad, her whole motivation later in life is she wants to have kids. She regrets becoming a sorceress. She wants to have a baby.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. It doesn't, like in episode 6, when she shows up to hunt the dragon, it's because she wants to use the dragon's heart to create this fertility potion or whatever. A fertility potion is not going to help you when you don't have a womb inside your body. Yeah. This is not a magical problem that can be solved with a potion. This is the physical reality of you deliberately choosing to get your uterus pulled out of your body so that you could be hot.
Yeah, I think the other thing too...
It totally kills her entire... It just makes the rest of her story totally nonsensical.
Right, another thing too is that in the show, at least by all the signs, she chose this because she was the one who was like, do this to me.
Right, yeah, she chose it specifically so that she could go impress this guy at the party and not get assigned to Nilfgaard.
Right, whereas meanwhile, in the book, it's not her choice. Everybody has to go through this. And I think that would create more resentment in her. Because you'd be resentful.
It completely changes
Right,
it.
because you'd be super resentful if someone took that away from you because it wasn't her choice.
We could honestly...
But now this was her choice. Yeah. So it's like it's very different in terms of the character.
It just changes everything. We could... Okay, I feel like we could like continue talking about individual things. There was like 5 of these per episode for me.
Right.
It just drove me crazy watching it.
So I guess I walked away... And I still think, like, I really do feel like if you haven't read the books, you'll enjoy it more. I really do feel like that, because a lot of these are things that I'm noticing because I felt like it was a thing the books did better.
I feel
Outside of things like, yes, the Ciri thing doesn't make as much sense, but I think you'd be more forgiving of like, oh, it was the destiny and they met, as opposed to being like, but it was emotional before.
That's so cheesy. And I think if you didn't read the books, you're just going to be... I think, okay, specifically for our audience, I think if you have played the games and not read the books, you're going to be so confused. I know that there are some people very vocally telling me that it's not that confusing. I think that a lot of what's going on in this show is just going to be incomprehensible to a lot of people.
I don't know. I've been reading the Witcher Netflix Twitter trend, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, it's the best thing ever."
I've been reading my mentions on Twitter, so I'm aware that people disagree with me, but y'all might be a vocal minority as well. I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, like, hey, if you disagree with us about the book changes or you don't care or you think it's fine, that's cool. I mean, like, I'm willing to say that maybe I'm being a book snob about some of this stuff, but at the same time, I read Game of Thrones before I watched Game of Thrones, and while it was adapted from the books, I really liked the show.
I don't know if that's the best.
But while it was adapted, I really liked the show.
Yes, before they ran out of book material, that was a good adaptation. They changed things that needed to be changed.
I thought it was a fantastic adaptation.
But they didn't up the story in those changes.
And then the same thing, I love the Harry Potter books. I read those before watching Harry Potter. I still really enjoy the movies. I read Lord of the Rings before watching Lord of the Rings. I think I actually like the movies more than the books. So it's like not always the case for me, but this I feel like it really screwed with it, the things they chose to remove in a bad way.
For me, it's not even, it is the book changes, but to me those are a symptom of a larger problem, which is that in insisting on structuring it this way, where these A, B, and C storylines are given equal weight and importance, I think it just is fundamentally not the story that it should be.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying the show and you want to pick up on some of the Easter eggs or book references that maybe you haven't noticed, we broke all that stuff down on GameSpot.com.
Yeah, and something as we wrap up I want to say is like, look, if you like this show, that's great. I'm not trying to hinder your enjoyment. That's great, and I'm glad that you loved the show, if you did. I just wanted to express that I had disappointments with it. I don't hate the show, I think it's okay, I thought it could have been better, and I think that's my disappointment with it.
That is very measured of you, Dave. Now, personally, this is the spot where we would normally say our Twitter handles. Y'all are in my mentions already. I don't want to hear, leave me alone, so I'm not going to do that.
Well, you can tweet at me your disdain for Mike at the Dave Klein. I don't care. I mean, like, look, again, if you like the show, that's great. I was disappointed. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you at least can understand our viewpoint, at the very least, even if you did love the show. Just like understand our viewpoint of it. So, hey, see you guys later.
This is a tough one.
Bye.